What's up, people? Today I am going to get into my Suicide Squad Blu-ray and 4K review coming up for you guys next. So the video quality of Suicide Squad. I'll start off with the Blu-ray because that's where I always start off. This Blu-ray definitely looks pretty damn good. I mean, you know, I know that this movie was made for the least budget out of all of the newer DC films, and for the most part, doesn't show on the screen. This is still a movie that was made for a decent amount of money, and it definitely shows just in the overall presentation here. And it is definitely very crisp and clear and seamless, especially for a movie that was actually shot on 35mm and digitally like all of the other DC films. I feel like this one, because of its gritty nature, the digital portion of it really blends in with the 35mm portion of it, and they work in harmony with each other. Now, the color palette here is actually represented really well with Joker's hair and that green goo that he and Harley Quinn get pushed into. Those colors are very well represented in this presentation. Now, unfortunately, the CGI is where this presentation falls short, just because I feel like the CGI in the movie itself really wasn't any great, especially everything involving Incubus, which is Enchantress's brother. There's a lot of CGI that goes along with him, and he is not a very good CGI creation, so all of his powers are really, really badly represented in this presentation just because of the fact that the CGI just isn't up to par. And for that, I'll have to give the Blu-ray of Suicide Squad an 8. It's a very solid presentation that, you know what, could be better, but it could be a lot worse also. So next, I'm going to be getting into the 4K Ultra HD transfer, and I will just say that this movie was actually shot, like I said, in 35mm and digitally to make up a 2K source. So like all of the other DC films, this is an up conversion from that 2K source, and yeah, that's just what we're going to get from all of these DC films. I think Justice League is going to be the same exact way, unfortunately. But how does the transfer actually measure up here? We definitely get a boost in clarity, and this definitely is a less grainier presentation, but at the same point in time, that is just me nitpicking, and really, you'd have to be hard-pressed to see the difference between the two. Now, talking about HDR and the upgraded color palette that comes along with that, it's not always a good thing. And with the case of this movie, it definitely isn't. I notice what is intended to be a lot more of a natural color palette, but a lot of the green in Joker's hair, or the dye that Joker and Harley fall into, that milky goo, and a lot of the titles in the movie just don't pop as much in this 4K transfer. I get what they're going for, you know, they want a more naturalistic look, but at the same point in time, I want these colors to actually pop, kind of like how they popped in the Blu-ray transfer, and they don't here because of how they have tweaked the color palette. And for that, I will have to give this a 7 out of 10. I don't feel like it is that much worse, but I definitely notice a difference with the color palette of this 4K transfer. So next we're going to be getting into the audio of Suicide Squad, and you won't want to miss it. We got it coming up for you guys next. So the audio of Suicide Squad. I've said this before, and one thing that I like about these DC films is that the Blu-ray and the 4K Blu-rays all come with the Dolby Atmos track, and that is a great thing that not all production companies do, and this one is a lot like the other Dolby Atmos tracks that Warner Brothers has pushed out for these DC films. I like it. It definitely has the rock star like poppin' vibe of the soundtrack. You know, this movie had a very like modern day rapper soundtrack to it, and despite not liking every song on the soundtrack, I actually like the way that it sounds on this Dolby Atmos track. You definitely get a sense for the music in this particular film. The overall scope and the dynamic quality of this audio track is also very robust, and with the fronts kicking in during action scenes, you definitely get a lot of action in your surrounds as well, and they are working together in perfect harmony here, just the way you want them to be, and it is definitely an immersive track. That is, with one exception, and that is the height speakers. You just don't get a lot of action in them. I feel like that has a lot to do with the fact that they are relegated to mostly the score in this film, and unfortunately, any audio track that does that with the Dolby Atmos format, I feel like it limits the amount that you can actually tell that is coming from those height speakers. And for a large majority of this movie, even though when I go up to my speakers and I put my ear to it, I can tell that the music is coming from that direction. I just don't get that standing back from them. And this tends to be one of the lighter Dolby Atmos tracks for the height speakers. And for that, I'll have to give this an 8 out of 10. This is still a pretty good audio mix that I have always been kind of disappointed with just because of the lack of activity in the height speakers. So next, guys, we're going to be getting into the special features for Suicide Squad. You won't want to miss it. I got it coming up for you next. So the special features for Suicide Squad. We have a lot of featurettes here like we have in most DC films. They definitely do like their featurettes, and we get a lot here, starting with a featurette that goes into the history of the Suicide Squad in the comic books, going back to the 60s, and then in their modern iteration that came into play in the late 80s. That's when we got a lot of the Amanda the Waller and that kind of stuff. We get a look at all of the characters and what their special skills are. You know, we even got Slipknot in here. Apparently he's a grappling expert. Who would have known? And of course, we have to go into the relationship between Joker and Harley Quinn, how it began, and where it is at this particular point in time. We get a few more featurettes after that, and a gag reel also. This is a final lot of special features that don't really have a lot of depth, and for that I'll have to give them a 6 out of 10. They did try, but at the same point in time, I don't really feel like I came out of them actually learning a whole lot that I didn't already know. So next we're going to be getting into my last looks at Suicide Squad and my final scores. Coming up for you guys next. So Suicide Squad was yet another divisive film from the DC Cinematic Universe. It is just my kind of divisive film. You know, I definitely have some performances here that I can actually, you know, stick with and really say, now that is the kind of performance that I thought of when I thought of that character. And I am talking about Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and Viola Davis as Amanda the Waller. Those two carry this movie for me, even where the tonal shifts come into play and where the lack of a villain really hits this movie hard, because it definitely does. And if you haven't watched my actual video review for Suicide Squad, I gave it a 6 out of 10. So when you add up all my scores, that actually gives the Blu-ray for Suicide Squad a 28 out of 40, and that gives the 4K version a 27 out of 40. And then that difference is just because I felt like the video presentation on the 4K disc lacked a little bit of the coloring because of the upgraded color palette that they kind of messed up in that 4K version. So what's coming up next on the channel? If you couldn't tell just by my coming up next little spot that I have allocated for you guys, I am going to be talking about the 20th anniversary 4K discs of Men in Black. At least the first movie was always in my VHS player when I was growing up as a kid, and I am hoping that that movie holds up because I haven't seen it in a long, long time. So I know you guys are interested in my reviews of the Men in Black series. Subscribe so you know when those videos come out, because you know you want to know when they come out, man. And comment below if you are excited to see those movies, because I am also. And as always, guys, thank you for watching my videos. You guys are great, and I will see all of you next time.